The 28th session of the Senate, the first regular session of the 19th Congress, is hereby called to order. Our distinguished colleague from Taguig, Senator Alan Peter S. Cayetano, will lead the chamber in prayer.
Let us all put our presence before our Almighty God. Lord Father God, we humble ourselves before you. How great thou art, Lord. We gather today with different ideas, with different ideologies, with different approaches, members of the administration, independents, oppositionists, to dwell on a very important, if not the most important, piece of legislation every year, which is the national budget. During these times of high prices, kawalan po ng trabaho, problema po kaliwat kanan, challenges not only in the country, in the region, but the whole world. We know, Lord God, that this is a time that we should totally depend on you. Please give us one spirit, give us wisdom, give all our cabinet members the strength, the wisdom, wise advisors, the best information, that we may play our part as the wiser men and women in government in this chamber to help the wise men and women in the palace craft a budget, Lord, that will lead us and show us the light at the end of the tunnel, not only with COVID, not only with all the problems with the world economy, but also taking note of each and every problem of each and every Filipino. We lift up to you our Senate President, our Minority Leader, and everyone in the chamber, and pray for strength, the right time. And Lord, we ask for wisdom for our chairperson, Sani Angara, that he may lead and he may also absorb, Lord, all these ideas and find a way to put it together to have the best budget. We lift this up to you and ask for your grace, for your forgiveness, for your healing, Lord Jesus Christ, as we ask the Lord Holy Spirit for this wisdom. Amen.
Amen. Secretary, may please call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senator Angara, Senator Binay, Senator Cayetano Alan, Senator Cayetano Pia, Senator De La Rosa, Senator Ejercito, Senator Escudero, Senator Estrada, Senator Gatchalian, Senator Go, Senator Ontiveros, Senator Lapid, Senator Legarda, Senator Marcos, Senator Padilla, Senator Pimentel, Senator Poe, Senator Revilla, Senator Tolentino, Senator Tulfo, Senator Villanueva, Senator Villar Cynthia, Senator Villar Mark, the Senate President.
With 23 senators present, the chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, before we continue, Mr. President, I failed to mention last session that during the break, our colleague, Senator Chis Escudero, celebrated his birthday last October 10. Senator Lapid celebrated his birthday October 25. And Senator Alan Peter Cayetano celebrated his birthday October 28. We just wanted to greet them a happy and victorious birthday, and we are still waiting
Yes.
for the traditional celebration in the lounge and outside of this chamber.
In other words, the break does not exempt them from treating us to lunch or
Yes.
afternoon meal. Are
Thank
they
you.
listening? Are they listening to you, Majority Leader? Parang hindi.
I don't see any one of them, Mr. President,
we shall-
reacting to our.
We shall appoint you to personally approach them. one by
Perhaps
one.
we should
Remind them.
move for a minute suspension.
Yes, I'd like to greet all of them a happy birthday and move for a minute suspension just for us to be able to approach them and greet them.
Thank you, Mr. President. you, Mr. President. Mr. President, at this juncture, may I be allowed to just greet some guests from the gallery? We have here with us, Mr. President, if I also move that we
Adjourn the
adjourn
session
the
in
other
back.
session, Mr. President, behind me, so I can be heard. We wanted to acknowledge and welcome our BSP Governor Felipe Medalla, BIR Commissioner Lilia Guillermo, NEDA Yusek Rosemary Edilon, she's representing NEDA, BOT Treasurer Rosalia De Leon, Bureau of Customs Acting Commissioner Yogi Filemon Ruiz. We also have with us, Mr. President, Department of Finance Secretary Benjamin Jokno, DBM Secretary Amena Pangandaman, Attorney Rolando Villaflor of Philippine Veterans Affairs Office. And we wanted to put on record that the Ambassador of Sweden to the Philippines, Her Excellency Annika Thunberg, is also with us, and we wanted to welcome them, Mr. President.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Yeah, we have a full house now, and I'm happy that all the heads of the departments, particularly the DOF and the DBM, are here with us today. And is Secretary Mina with us?
Yes, Mr. President, I was told that she's in the area, Mr. President.
Secretary Mina?
She's inside the premises, Mr. President.
Okay. Yes,
Also,
because
Mr. President, if I may, we have with us also delegates from the Bangsamoro Transition Authority, Journal Division of the Secretariat, and JCI Senate San Juan, headed by Herbert Tang, and JCI San Juan Pinaglabanan, headed by Miki Celes.
welcome to your Senate, gentlemen and ladies. No, the reason why, Majority Leader, that I was looking for Secretary Mina Pangandaman is because for Secretary Jokno's knowledge, the Senate is sort of now like a mini DBM. That's why I was late for 5 minutes, because I had several visitors again to my office asking for hundreds of millions of pesos worth of projects. I hope that they can just submit this to the DBM
Should
for
we
final
forward, Mr.
action.
President, all the folders that we are collecting
Yes, we
here?
can submit it to Secretary Jokno. He's nodding his head. He'll take action on it now.
The chairperson, Senator Bato, is laughing,
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
And I think he's very happy today, Mr. President, to see Secretary Jokno.
Thank you, because as far as I know, the request already on my table has hit already 25 billion. And I don't know what they think the Senate is all about, but we are a legislative body and not the DBM. So I hope that they submit this instead to the DBM or the DOF. Accommodating naman si Secretary Jokno, Mr. Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President. Thank you. With that, Mr. President, and with the permission of the body, we take this privileged speech up. And I ask that we recognize, Mr. President, the distinguished gentleman from the great city of San Juan, Senator Jinggoy Estrada, to deliver his privileged speech.
The distinguished gentleman from the city of San Juan, Senator Jinggoy Estrada, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, my dear colleagues, good afternoon. I rise today on a matter of personal and collective privilege. For the past several weeks, I have been subjected to numerous tirades over a comment I made during the hearing on the proposed 2023 budget of the Film Development Council of the Philippines, or FDCP, last October 18. The records of the Senate, specifically the Finance Subcommittee M, will bear me out that I was trying to take a grasp of the state that the audiovisual services sector has been in nowadays, which by and large is on the verge of collapse even during the pre-pandemic period, and which was painted in that hearing to be now in the ICU needing critical care from specialists. Sadly, my statements were magnified and even misconstrued by many, including a number of industry members who are part of the more than 760,000 workforce in the film sector, who I was trying to protect and fight for. What reverberated in the minds of many was the farthest thing from my mind. I was portrayed as a villain and an antagonist. Nakakalungkot na mas nanaig sa kaisipan ng marami ang mga katagang ito, hindi ko layon na mangyari. Be that as it may, I deem it best to put forth the issues plaguing the barely surviving industry that is personally close to my heart, with the desire of lighting even a glimmer of hope that it can still be salvaged. This, Mr. President, is the abysmal state of our local film industry. For this year alone, only 9 local movies have been released, according to the theater group operators. 9 out of the 20 Filipino films reviewed by the MTRCB since January this year. Napakasakit po isipin na may panahon na umaabot sa 300 ang naproproduce na pelikula kada taon. Now, it's not even a fraction. To come up with a quality film, producers have to fork out between 10 to 30 million. And according to FDCP Chairperson Tirso Cruz III, and to recoup this, they have to earn at least triple or 270%. But how can an industry barely in survival mode and among the most heavily taxed entertainment in Asia recover from its current state? To further illustrate, for a 50 million film production with a 100 million box office revenue, the producer needs to pay amusement taxes, value-added tax, and distribution fee. 10% will go to the amusement tax, and 90% will go to the theater owners and film producers. Then 45% of the ticket sales will go to theater owners. That has been the standard agreement between the producers and cinema owners or operators for the longest time, as the latter claim that they invest in the construction and maintenance of theaters. On top of this, there is VAT to be paid by the producer, and from the 45 million peso ticket sales, the amount will dwindle to 39.6 million. And from these figures, a 5% distribution fee will still be deducted, which leaves the producer with a final amount of 37.62 million pesos, which means that the producer loses 12,380,000 pesos. And if a producer makes a profit, he still has to pay a 30% income tax. The film industry, following the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, is confronted by an unprecedented phenomenon of almost no revenue coming in despite the easing of social restrictions. Likewise, our kababayans have to spend around 280 to 450 pesos per person in admission tickets when they watch in movie houses. Konti na lang ay katumbas na ito ng arawang kita ng mga minimum wage earners na nasa 316 to 537 pesos kada araw. Sa panahon ng kagipitan, kung kailan mahina ang piso kontra sa dolyar, mataas ng presyo ng langis at mga bilihin, madaling unawain at na hindi praktikal sa mga kababayan natin ang gumastos ng ganitong halaga. Tama nga sinabi ni Catherine Bernardo sa Hello, Love, Goodbye. Ang choice para lang sa may pera. Paano ba natin matutulungan ang naghihingalong industriya? Kailangan ba natin isubsidize ang paggawa ng mga pelikula? How will we do it? Should we give incentives to the movie producers or review the current tax structure? Sa pag-aaral na isinagawa ng ating Senate Tax Study and Research Office at batay na rin sa datos ng National Tax Research Center, the revenue collections from amusement taxes are relatively insignificant as compared to other types of taxes. Mula 2014 hanggang 2018, on the average ay nasa higit 1 bilyon lamang ang koleksyon mula dito. And not having to pay this tax would also significantly help Filipino producers recover their invested capital and enable them to produce more films in the long run. But even with fewer taxes to pay, the producers will still have to pay other taxes like VAT and income tax. Sa aspeto naman ng amusement tax na nasa ilalim ng Local Government Code at 1997 Tax Code, limitado lamang ang saklaw nito. Naniniwala ako na hindi malaking kawalan nito sa kita ng gobyerno. Sakali man natanggalin ito, maaari natin ito na mabawi dahil kung mapapasigla natin ang entertainment industry, lalaki ang labor force at lalago ang industriya na maaari mapagkunan ng mga tinatawag na recoupment tax gaya ng business tax or business permit para sa mga local governments, corporate income tax ng mga bagong korporasyon, withholding tax sa mga manggagawa sa industriya at lalago ang consumption tax o value-added tax. May mga bansa gaya ng France, Italy, Spain, Canada, South Korea at Malaysia na nagpapataw ng minimum quota requirements upang mapanatili ang exposure o masiguro ang pagpapalabas sa sinehan ng mga locally produced films. And at the expense of being tagged as second-rate trying hard copycat, baka napapanahon ng gawin din natin ito sa Pilipinas. Sa ganitong paraan, masisiguro ang paglalaan ng screening sa mga sinihan, lalo na ng mga dekalidad ng pelikulang Pilipino. We are replete with world-class artists, and on many occasions, Filipino filmmakers and artists brought honor and pride to the country by winning top prizes in international film festivals around the world. Brillante Mendoza bested renowned directors like Ang Lee, Quentin Tarantino, and others when he became the first Filipino to win the coveted Best Director Award during the 62nd Cannes Film Festival for his film Kinatay. While Lav Diaz won major awards in the 2014 Locarno International Film Festival, 2016 Berlin Festival, and 73rd Venice Film Festival. The most recent were veteran thespian Jacqueline Jose, the first Filipina to bag the Best Actress Award at the Cannes Film Festival for her stirring portrayal in Ma Rosa, while accomplished actor Jana Rosilla won the Volpi Cup for Best Actor at the 78th Venice Film Festival for his outstanding performance in On the Job, The Missing Eight. These achievements exemplify the remarkable artistic talent and skill of Filipinos, on par with the world's best. At naniniwala ako na kaya natin makipagsabayan sa mga gawang banyaga, ngunit aminado ako na kailangan ng industriya ng suporta ng ating gobyerno. And one good thing that came out of this issue is that it has paved the way for the discussion on the matters concerning the Philippine entertainment industry. Our ailing film industry needs all the support, not only from the government, but more so from the movie-going public. And just like what some vloggers or YouTubers are doing, promoting local tourist destinations or hidden gems in the country, movies can also create a boost for tourism. This is what is now happening, admittedly in South Korea, and it has similarly had the same effect in other countries following the release of films such as Lord of the Rings, Braveheart, Harry Potter, and TV series such as Crash Landing on You. On the local front, some movies and TV programs that were well received by the audience are now engraved in our collective consciousness. Some of these include iconic scenes like Mount Kiltipan from the movie That Thing Called Tadhana, the beauty of the Cordillera region courtesy of the movie Don't Give Up on Us, Batanes in the movie You're My Boss, and the fictional local community Sitio La Presa in Tuba Benguet due to the 2014 TV series Forevermore, to name a few. The Philippines also played as host as the filming location for acclaimed Hollywood movies such as Apocalypse Now in 1979, Platoon in 1986, Born on the 4th of July 1989, and The Bourne Legacy 2012. It's probably high time for the government to consider the idea of providing government subsidy to film industry, just like what investments made by the South Korea's Ministry of Culture, Sports, and Tourism to fund a 5-year plan for their domestic animation and character industries. It provided support to startup operations through a new state facility and automatic subsidies to establish animation studios based on the performance of their earlier projects. Government should encourage the promotion of Filipino culture, cuisine, tourism, and heritage as part of the content. Create or provide scholarships, workshops for scriptwriters, production personnel, musicians to strive for excellence in this field and industry, and provide tax breaks or lower taxes on the industry to incentivize the local entertainment industry. The government could probably consider institutionalizing or replicating the programs of the Movie Workers Foundation or MOEL Fund. The MOEL Fund, the only one of its kind in Asia, provides social welfare program for movie workers and a development program to uplift the movie industry. And by the way, the MOEL Fund was founded by my father, former President Joseph Estrada. Many outstanding new talents in the local movie industry are products of the MOEL Fund Film Institute, which conducts workshops in directing, cinematography, photography, animation, scriptwriting, stunts, documentary, and acting. In ending this issue, I just want to lay emphasis that I'm merely trying to alleviate the plight of my colleagues in the film industry. After all, development starts with the most important element in the industry, the movie worker. Just like what my father said. Also, I am merely carrying out my duties and responsibilities as an elected member of this august chamber in advancing the interests of those in the country's film industry. Sa hanay ng mga miyembro ng Senado, masasabi ko na makakaasa ng suporta ang tiga-industriya mula sa tatlo ko pang kasamahan, kabilang rin sa entertainment industry, sina Senators Bong Revilla Jr., Robin Hood Padilla, at Manuel Lito Lapid. At pati na rin ang anak ng nag-iisang hari ng pelikulang Pilipino at dating MTRCB chairman na si Senator Grace Poe. Hindi po ako nagpapakabayani o nagpapabida sa isyong ito. Pagkus, ang tanging hangad ko lamang ay mapanatili at mapalawak pa ang mga oportunidad sa industriyang nananatiling malapit sa akin at patuloy ko na pinapahalagaan hanggang sa ngayon. Maraming salamat sa inyong pakikinig at mabuhay ang pelikulang Pilipino. And before that, I would like to advise my colleagues that I will entertain interpellations, if any, after the sponsorship of Senator Sara Angara. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to our distinguished colleague, Senator Estrada. Mr. President, Senator Bong Revilla would like to make a short manifestation. I move that she be recognized, Mr. President.
Yes, Senator Bong Revilla of the great province of Cavite is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a short manifestation. Maaari ding sumagot ang aking kaibigan for a few questions. Okay, Ginoong Pangulo, alam naman po nating lahat na kami ni Senator Jingo Estrada, Senator Lito Lapid, Senator Robin Hood Padilla, maging si Senator Grace Poe ay galing sa industriya ng pelikulang Pilipino. In fact, records of the Senate will bear that I have been consistent on attributing where I am today to the local entertainment industry. Ito po ang bumuhay sa akin at sa aking pamilya sa mahabang panahon at hanggang ngayon. Kaya naman tulad po ng senator natin mula sa San Juan, napakalapit po talaga ang industriya ito sa aming puso at talagang ipaglalaban namin. Kaya't ako'y nalungkot nung nabash ang aking kaibigan regarding the K-drama banning in our country. Yun po ay siguro na misinterpret lamang. Pero ang talagang hangarin niya ay tulungan ang industriya ng pelikulang Pilipino at maging telebisyon. Wala pong masama doon. Wala pong ibaban si Senator Jinggoy. Ang gusto niya ay tulungan ang industriya ng pelikulang Pilipino at maging telebisyon. This is why I share the sorrow and concern of the good gentleman over the present state of our industry. Mr. President, noon ay may hindi bababa sa 4 na pelikula ang naglalaban-laban sa opening day kada linggo. With all modesty, sa pagbubukas po ng pelikula ni FPJ, ni Rudy Fernandez, ni Philip Salvador, ni Vilma Santos, Sharon Cuneta, Nora Honor, maging po si Senator Jinggoy, pelikula ni Robin Padilla, maging po ang inyong lingkod, hindi naman po sa pagyayabang, iniiwasan po kami ng mga foreign films. More than 100 theaters nilalabas ang aming pelikula
Pati si Pinuno.
sa kada linggo.
Dito lang.
Maging, of course, yes, Senator Lito Lapid, lalo na. Yung mga superstars po, mga kababayan, si Leon Guerrero. Those were the days not so long ago. At hindi nga po kaila na naging matamlay ang industriya lalo pat nga itong pinadapa ng pandemya. Talagang nakakalungkot mga kababayan. The entertainment industry may very well be considered as frontliners, especially during the pandemic. Through television and streaming, people were provided with the escape when we were all locked up in our homes, dreading the uncertainty. Ganun pa man, doble din ang hagupit ng pandemya sa kanila. The pandemic gave us a looking glass into the true state of the entertainment industry and how much it needs to be rehabilitated. Ang kailangan ng industriya ay konkretong mga plano na damang tulong upang manumbalik ang sigla nito. Katulad lamang ng mga binanggit ng aking kumpadring Senator Jinggoy kung paano tutugunan ang pangangailangan ng industriya ng pelikulang Pilipino. Kailangan pong maibalik natin ang aral muli sa ating mga kababayang Pilipino, lalo-lalo na sa mga kabataan. Kailangan natin silang bigyan ng aral o suporta pa. Kaya po mga kababayan, one of my priority bills, the Senate Bill number 28 on the revival of the Philippine Movie Industry Act, and I also recently filed Senate Bill 1409 on the Philippine film industry. I hope that with the shepherding of our chairperson, ang ating pong chairman ni Senator Robin Hood Padilla ng intellectual Public Information and Mass Media. Siya po ang chairman ngayon. I'm sure talaga yung puso niya nandito rin. Sabi nga, kung hindi po dahil sa industriyang ito, walang Jinggoy, walang Erap, walang Robin, walang Bong Revilla, walang Grace po. Kaya po mga kababayan po, inihiling namin na sana tayo magtulungan. Our colleagues, sana po suportahan natin, ibangon natin ang industriya ng pelikulang Pilipino at maging telebisyon. Maraming salamat po. Thank you very much.
Majority Leader, may I weigh in also on the,
Yes, Mr. President.
just for
please.
2 minutes? Yeah,
Yes,
with the
Mr.
permission of
President.
my colleagues. I sympathize with distinguished colleague Senator Jinggoy Estrada. As a matter of fact, today or yesterday, in interview ako ng media, meron akong isang statement to promote the Philippines. At binash ako ng binash. I did not believe that I would receive such negative reaction from the public. This is exactly what I said. I appeal to the media, tulungan nyo naman kami pagandahin ang imahe ng Pilipinas. Diba? Minamahal natin ang ating bansa. Hindi ko maintindihan, may mga thousands of negative comments. Ang punto ko dyan, and I commensurate with all of you, is it too much to ask that we help promote our country? Is it too much to ask our kababayans to help promote our country? I can't believe the amount of negativity that one statement will bring. As a matter of fact, yung gustong layunin ni Senator Jinggoy, buhayin yung pelikulang Pilipino na sariling atin. At siya po'y hindi ambon, siya ay pinaliguan, nakatakot-takot na negative comments. Ako nga, ang inihingi ko lang, apela, hindi po ako nag-order. I'm not ordering. I'm appealing to media to help the image of our country. Is that too much to ask? When we go abroad, we see the beautiful imagery of Thailand, of Malaysia, of all these other countries that, are not even as democratic as us. We are more democratic as a nation as compared to our neighbors, with due respect to them. Ako, I will not dignify their negative comments. I will continue to fight for our country. I will continue to believe in our country. And I will continue to promote our country as much as I can. I want to be a patriot, and I will be a patriot. For those haters, please join me. Let us be patriotic for our country once in a while. Let us fight for our country. Maraming salamat, Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. We share the sentiments of our distinguished colleagues, Mr. President, and I think it's just but proper for all of us to have a free flow of ideas, Mr. President, and we feel the sentiments of our dear colleague Senator Jinggoy that whenever you are in this August chamber, we are always free to express our ideas and aspirations. We are agreeing to disagree in so many issues, and that's the essence of democracy. And that's how we get the best among ourselves, the best ideas among our colleagues. So, Mr. President, at this juncture, may I also move that the distinguished gentleman from Bicol, Senator Robin Hood Padilla, be recognized for his manifestation.
And also raising his hand is the gentleman from Cavite.
Yes, afterwards,
Senator
Mr.
Robin.
President. Thank you.
Maraming salamat po, atin pong pinunong Maruya. Isang magandang hapon po sa inyo, mga mahal na Ginoong Tagapangulo. Napakaganda po ng inyong nabigkas ng mga salita. Ito po'y nakakapagpataba ng puso ng lahat ng mga Pilipino.
Salamat, Senator Robin.
Ako po ay nagbibigay pugay sa buong lupon ng Senado at ako po ay taas noo at nagpupugay din sa ating pong kasama na si Senador Jinggoy Estrada at kay Senador Bong Revilla. Tunay po ang kanilang sinabi. Nung panahon po namin, talagang masasabi po namin na kahit na kami po ay punutakti ng tax, kaliwat kanan tax, kami po ay nagbabayad. Para ang artista, ang mga producer, kami po ay buong puso na nagbabayad sapagkat napakalaki po ng kinikita namin nung panahon na yun. Ngayon po, sinabi po ng aking mga kasamang senador, ngayon po ay nasa punto na lugmok ang industriya. At ang hinihingi po namin sana ay magkaroon po ng suspensyon sa mga tax na ito. Ang dami po naming tax na binabayaran. May amusement tax, lahat po ng klase ng tax nandun na. Sana po dumating po ang punto na kami po ay mabigyan ng industriya na makahinga lamang. Makahinga. Hindi naman po namin sinasabi na suspindihin to ng totally. Ganun. English yun, ha? Ano lang po, kahit pansamantala lang. Opo. Alam niyo po, Ginoong Pangulo, napakaganda po nung sinabi ninyo eh. Pag ako tinanong, sinasabi ng lahat, hindi, nagbiro lang ako. Sabi ko, mas gwapo ako sa mga Koreano. Nabash din po ako. Sabi ko, pambihira ito ah. Pero isa lang ang masasabi ko. Kapag merong nagsabi sa akin, mas may gaganda si Pilipina, hindi ako papayag. Walang pinakamaganda kundi Pilipina. Oo.
Amen.
At walang pinakamabango. Ito po. Ginoong Pangulo, Alam naman po natin, ngayon pag binuksan po natin ang Netflix po lahat po ng online. Makikita po natin, alam ko po maintindihan niyo po ako dahil martial artist po kayo. Makikita niyo po diyan ang mga palabas ng Thailand, ng Indonesia, ng Malaysia. Lahat po yan, meron silang martial artist na artista. Mahal na tagapangulo, alam naman po natin na walang pinakamagaling na martial artist kundi Pinoy. Nakikita po natin yan sa UFC, sa 1FC, ang nagcha-champion dyan. Mga lakay, talagang mga Pinoy. At si Bruce Lee mismo, pinamana niya ang Jeet Kune Do sa Pilipino kay Dan Inosanto. Si Magellan, tinepok ng Pilipino yan.
Tama.
Tayo po ang pinakamagaling. Ang hindi ko po matanggap, bakit wala sa Netflix ang Pilipino martial artist? Siguro panahon na po para suportahan din natin ang isang artista na magpo-promote ng Filipino martial arts. Pasikatin po natin ito sapagkat tayo mga Pilipino tunay na martial artist. Sana po suportahan ng ating gobyerno na magkaroon po tayo ng pelikula na magsusuporta at magpapakita ng Filipino martial arts. Yun lamang po, mahal na tagapangulo, maraming salamat po. At muli po, sinusundan ko po ang hakbang ni Senator Jinggoy Estrada at ni Senator Bong Revilla. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat, Ginoong Senator Robin Padilla. Totoo po yan, Senador. Alam nyo, manood po kayo ng action films. Mga James Bond, manood po kayo ng Jason Bourne, manood po kayo ng Mission Impossible. Ang ginagamit po nila mga fighting techniques dyan ay FMA, which is Filipino Martial Arts, stick fighting and knife fighting. Pero hindi po na-acknowledge yan. At meron na nga po mga bansa na sinasabi, kanila na daw po yan. So dapat i-promote natin yan as a brand. Filipino Martial Arts as a brand. Because talagang inumpisa niya nila Lapu-Lapu. Yan pong aming idolo sa Filipino Martial Arts ay sila Lapu-Lapu. Ako isang ayon dyan. Dapat siguro mag-ambag po kami dito para gumawa ka ng pelikula. Senator Robin Padilla, i-promote natin yung FMA. Pugay. We'd like to recognize the gentleman from Cavite, Senator.
Mr. President, it's just a
yes.
point of information on the statements made by the gentleman from Bicol. At saka tungkol din po ito sa inyo, no? I'd like to be educated kasi tinawag po kayo ng Ginoong Maruya. Ang alam ko sa Maruya, pritong
Mayorya po yan, Mayorya.
Yun, kasi ang rinig namin lahat,
Mayorya.
bago ba yun? Kasi alam ko pritong saging yun.
Pinunong mayorya.
Okay, let's calm down. Order, please, order.
Sorry po.
Okay. That was just a
Lord Leader.
mistake on the part of Senator Robin.
I am always willing to be educated. Kasi sabi ko, baka naman so gusto kong malaman dahil ba matamis kayo o para ba kayong piniprito sa mantika? Yun yung gusto kong malaman. Yung pala, lahat kami
Yeah.
mali ang rinig.
Puno mayorya.
Yung tawa nung nasa likod ko, kaya hindi ko kayo marinig. Salamat po, nililiwanag
Thank you po.
ko lang.
Thank you po.
Wala po akong kinalaman sa Maruya, Mr. President. Pero masarap po yan pag sinausaw sa suka.
Yes,
Mr.
Senator
President,
Tolentino.
na-miss din natin si Ramon Zamora, Mr. President.
Yes,
Mr. President, may I be allowed to, may I move that we recognize the distinguished gentleman from Cavite, Senator Francis Tolentino?
before we do that, let's have a little bit of order. The session floor, the session hall. Yes, the distinguished gentleman from Cavite is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I likewise join through a simple manifestation the advocacies of our colleague, Senator Jinggoy Estrada. Although I was not mentioned, Mr. President, that for a short and brief period of time, I was part of the movie industry, but not as an actor, Mr. President. I was the one who organized the first ever highest gross record-breaking Metro Manila Film Festival. Modesty aside, it grossed more than ₱1 million. And I recall, Mr. President, billion, with Senator Gatchalian as one of the mayors of Metro Manila. And I think Senator Estrada was still a mayor then of San Juan. no longer, oh, the good one was the mayor of San Juan. But Mr. President, seriously, Mr. President, I agree that there is a need to overhaul existing subsidies being given to the local film industry. Mr. President, for the record, Colombia would provide 60% cash rebate just to have international film production outfits produce films in Colombia. Fiji, 50% cash rebate. Canada, 30 to 70% cash tax rebate. Mr. President, including the small country of Dominican Republic. Pag nag-shooting ka sa Dominican Republic, you will be given a 25% transferable tax on all development, pre-production, production, and post-production expenses incurred in the Dominican Republic. Sa atin po, Mr. President, walang ganon. Nung araw po, Mr. President, nung bata-bata pa tayo, yung Avenida Rizal, yung Escolta, nandyan po lahat ng sinihan. Nandyan po lahat yan. Nakikita po natin yan. Yung State Theater, yung Lord's Theater, etc., etc. Inabot po yan ni Senator Jinggoy. Kaya po nararamdaman po natin lahat yung dinadanas niya na nabas siya. At sa palagay ko po, Mr. President, dapat matulungan natin mabuhay ang local film industry not just through a short film festival. Dapat po year-round na, Mr. President. When I was Metro Manila Film Festival Chairman, Mr. President, I initiated the Cell Phone Film Festival. Sa cellphone na lang to entice college students, high school students to show their creativity, Mr. President. Mag-produce sila ng sariling pelikula. Kaya nga through this manifestation, Mr. President, perhaps the good chairperson of the Mass Media Committee can craft, and I'm more than willing to assist him, a bill that would overhaul, enhance the local film industry, similar to Potsdam in Germany, Mr. President, where they have their own small place, similar to Bollywood in India, where they have a place where they encourage new actors, new startup film outfits, outfits to produce with government incentives, tax rebates, at katulong na rin po yung mga LGUs. Katulong na rin po yung mga LGUs. I look at the model, Mr. President, of Croatia. Croatia, Mr. President, and even the place you visited last month, France. France has 30% tax rebate of qualified expenditures for international productions. Ang huli lang po nating na-film ata dito, kung hindi ako nagkakamali, Mr. President, yung Born Legacy.
Born Legacy.
Napakatagal na po nun, hindi na po nasundan yon. We have to encourage this. So that's why I support the speech. I join the feelings right now being bashed, Senator Jinggoy, and it's about time that we overhaul through tax incentives and other creative measures our local film industry. Maraming salamat po, Mr. President.
And just 2 points to add to that, Majority Leader. I filed one, I think it was the 17th Congress, a bill, sana matulungan ako ng ating mga kasamahan dito sa industriyang pelikulang Pilipino, na gawin at least, kung hindi natin kayang gawin year-round, gawin natin twice a year yung MMF, Manila Film Festival, MFF, which is basically December, di ba? December po yan, at dapat mayroong summer, middle of the year, para at least dalawa. Para sa ganun ay medyo mabubuhay na konting ating pelikulang Pilipino. And pangalawa, it all boils down to nationalism, yung nationalismo. Yung gusto natin tangkilikin ng sarili nating produkto. Kaya nga sabi ko kanina, let's promote the Philippines. Part and parcel of promoting the Philippines yan. Kung hindi maganda imahe ng Pilipinas, walang gagawang pelikula dito. Totoo po yan. Kung tropical ang setting, baka sabihin nila, doon na lang tayo sa Thailand kasi baka magulo dyan dahil yung nakikita natin sa news, puro gulo. Di ba? Kaya dapat promote din natin yung Philippines ng maayos. Yes, Senator Jinggoy.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to give you a brief background with regard to the Metro Manila Film Festival. The Metro Manila Film Festival was founded by my father in 1975, and it is still ongoing up to this now. And before that, there was a Manila Film Festival held every June of the year. Kaso mo, hindi yata natuloy, it was short-lived. Kasi pagdating ng June, tag-ulan na. Hindi na pumapasok yung mga moviegoers. But I heard from the MMDA that they are planning to hold a summer film festival
Yun ang maganda.
on the month of April yata.
Oo.
So we might have two festivals. One is the Summer Film Festival, and the other is the
Summer Film Festival.
Metro Manila Film Festival. At during those times, especially sa Metro Manila Film Festival, walang foreign films na pinalalabas. Panay Tagalog films.
Yes, that's the idea.
And that is the idea.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr.
I
President.
will support that, Your Honor.
Thank you.
If there is a measure on the floor, particularly.
Yes, Mr. President, last but not the least, to make a short manifestation, Mr. President,
Is
is
the princess. She's the princess of Filipino.
the amazing grace of the Senate, the former chairperson of the Committee on Public Information, Mr. President.
Yes.
Senator Grace po, I move that she be recognized, Mr.
To the
President.
distinguished lady senator, the daughter of the king of Philippine cinema, and a very great senator on her own right,
Nice.
Senator Grace po.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction, Mr. President, and to the Majority Leader. Of course, it's no surprise that this issue is very much important for many of our colleagues here. So many have found their roots in the film and television industry. I, for one, has filed Senate Bill 867, or the Philippine Film and Television Tourism Act of 2022. Mr. President, Senator Tolentino pointed out the benefits of giving incentives so that producers from other countries will think of shooting their films here in the Philippines. Let me give you an example, Mr. President. Not only will it provide jobs for our local talents, cameramen that they will hire here, local artists that they can get to star in their films, but it also promotes the country, as you mentioned. Let's not forget New Zealand was made even more popular. I think tourism increased by more than 60% after Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
There's also the beach that showcased the beautiful islands of Thailand, which we have, I think, if not better, comparable islands. Unfortunately, The Born Identity was at the title of the movie that was shot here, showed Palawan rather briefly and in the middle of the ocean. You can't even see the shoreline. So, Mr. President, it's really important. Can you imagine we pay for billboards to be shown in Times Square that showcases the beauty of the Philippines? But with one film watched by not only in cinemas but also streaming through Netflix, you can showcase the beauty of the Philippines. That's millions of dollars that we save on advertising. So I hope that we pass this Film Tourism Act, the details of which I will not get into now because I know that we have a very important measure to sponsor today. But I also would like to say that a lot of the workers in the film industry are really hard pressed now because of the pandemic that happened. But there are other areas. You close a door, a window will open. Now there's a streaming platform that they are, I think, more aggressively pursuing. So that's all, Mr. President. Thank you to my dear colleague, Senator Estrada, for bringing this issue to light.
Maraming salamat po, Ginang Grace po.
Thank
Yes,
you,
Ah,
Mr.
yes, sir.
President. Just last point, Mr. President, as it was mentioned several times, there are so many films from Netflix, series, Mr. President, na kung saan yung isang lugar sa Korea, kunyari, pinakita, naging tourist attraction na, Mr. President. And I have known a lot of my friends, Mr. President, going to this part of South Korea na never heard, Mr. President. And if you look at the pictures, hindi naman malayong malayo sa kagandahan sa nakikita dito sa ating bansa. So I hope we will all support these initiatives being raised by our distinguished colleagues. Mr. President, a lot of our colleagues would like to participate in the privileged speech of Senator Jinggoy, but due to lack of time for today, Mr. President, I would just move to suspend consideration on the privileged speech of Senator Jinggoy Estrada. So move.
There's a motion. There being no objection, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we transfer from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders, House Bill number 4488 on Committee Report number 10, entitled An Act Appropriating Funds for the Operation of the Government of the Republic of the Philippines from January 1 to December 31, 2023. I so move, Mr. President.
Before that, we'll just have a reference of business so that we can, hindi pa siya nabasa.
Okay, Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
There being no objection to the motion of the majority leader, motion is approved. Where's my reference of business? Okay. Please proceed, Secretary.
Committee reports. Committee report number 9, prepared and submitted jointly by the Committees on Higher, Technical and Vocational Education, Public Works and Finance on Senate number 1470, with Senators Cayetano P, Cayetano A, Revilla Jr., Escudero, and Angaras authors thereof, an act strengthening the mechanism for land use development and infrastructure planning and budgeting for state universities and colleges, amending for the purpose RA 11396, otherwise known as the SUC's Land Use Development and Infrastructure Plan Act, recommending its approval in substitution of Senate number 251, sponsor Senator Escudero.
Calendar for ordinary business.
Committee report number 10, submitted by the Committee on Finance on House number 4488, introduced by Representative Ko E. et al., entitled, An Act Appropriating Funds for the Operation of the Government of the Republic of the Philippines from January 1 to December 31, 2023, recommending its approval with amendments. Sponsor Senators Angara, Cayetano P, Legarda, Marcos, Villar, De La Rosa, Gatchalian, Go, Hontiveros, Binay, Po, Tolentino, Villar, Ejercito, and all members of the Senate Committee on Finance.
To the calendar for ordinary business. Majority leader. Will you move for the previous motion?
Yes, Mr. President, I move for the previous motion that we transfer from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders, House Bill number 4488 on Committee Report number 10. So move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we consider House Bill number 4488 as reported out under Committee Report number 10. So move, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the motion is approved. May the Secretary read the title of the measure.
House number 4488, an act appropriating funds for the operation of the government of the Republic of the Philippines from January 1 to December 31, 2023.
Majority leader.
Yes, Mr. President. To sponsor the measure, may I ask, Mr. President, that we recognize the chairperson of the Senate Committee on Finance, the distinguished gentleman from the great province of Aurora, our hardworking chair, Senator Sani Angara. Be recognized, Mr. President.
The hardworking chairman of the Committee on Finance, coming from the province of Aurora, Senator Sani Angara is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader. Dear colleagues, it is an honor to sponsor today Committee Report number 10 and on House Bill 4488. This is the National Budget or the 2023 General Appropriations Act. Mr. President, as maiden budgets of new administrations go, this one was expedited, delivered to us in an impressive 7 weeks after Inauguration Day. But it would be wrong to say that its components were mostly salvaged from the fiscal workshop of the past administration. The President has made it clear in his message to us that every peso that he seeks to spend in 2023 is aligned with his administration's thrust. And what are these? To boost growth, to cut poverty, to trim the deficit, to pare down debt, and to catapult us to the League of Upper Middle Income Nations. Sa panukalang budget, Mr. President, lahat ng ito ay nagsisilbing mga tanglaw, pinaiilawan ang daan kung saan dapat pumunta ang pondo ng bayan, para saan at gaano kalaki ang halaga. Kaya maling isipin na ang budget ay simpleng spreadsheet o listahan ng mga numero lamang. Una sa lahat, ito ay isang plano. Pinag-uusapan ang mga hakbang patungo kaunlaran at kasaganaan. Kaya kung bibilangin natin ilang daan ba ang magagawa, mga patabang maibibigay, mga patrol ng pulis na madedeploy, mga kaso sa korte na matatapos, mga scholarship na mabibigay, mga R&D projects na mailulunsad, mga teacher na masasweldohan sa ilalim ng budget na ito. Hindi lang sila mga hiwa-hiwalay na budget items lamang. Lahat po sila nakatahi sa mga pangarap natin para sa bansa. Ang pinakamatindi pa rin nating dapat pagtuon ng pansin ay kung paano tayo aahon bilang isang bansa mula sa epekto ng pandemya gamit ang budget na ito. Dapat ito ang magiging tulay natin para muling bumangon. The conventional way, Mr. President, of introducing the national budget is to trot out its macroeconomic assumptions upon which expenditures are anchored. You have GDP growth, forecast oil prices, inflation, peso-dollar exchange rates, interest rates, which do shape the contours of the budget. But in years of defending the budget, we have come to distill the other fundamentals that shape and substantiate annual appropriations. In layman's terms, ang tawag po dito, ang 4Ps sa budgeting. Bawat isa sa kanila ay malaki ang impact sa paggugol sa salapi ng taumbayan. Una ay populasyon. As our population grows, so must the budget. Pangalawa ay presyo. Inflation spikes operating expenses of the government, a bulk buyer of goods and services. The budget must also help people cope with rising prices. Pangatlo ay proyekto. We have an infrastructure deficit in the trillions of pesos, Mr. President. For us to grow, crumbling infrastructure cannot compete for investments. It is thus imperative that we hike capital outlays yearly. Pang-apat po ay payroll o ang sinasabi nating PS o personal services na kasama ang pensyon ng mga retiradong uniformed personnel at ang sari-saring premium contributions ng pamahalaan bilang employer. But these are not the only factors that move the needle of spending. Macropolitical and other exigent conditions can also cause tectonic shifts in our fiscal positions. Some, like calamities, man-made and natural, often butt in the middle of the budget season unannounced, leaving bills which put a squeeze into an already tight budget. For next year, we can call these three other Ps pandemic, Putin, and Paeng. Our economy remains debilitated by the effects of long COVID. Although we have installed springboards for recovery amidst the rubble, the takeoff is not yet in the desired velocity that will propel us past the damages it has caused. Then there is the war in Ukraine, Mr. President, which is 7 time zones away from us, but did not spare us from the fallout of fuel, food, and fertilizer crises it has unleashed. At dahil tayo ay nasa expressway ng bagyo, on top of the ring of fire, and geographically unlucky that natural basins marinate towns during the monsoon months, nilalamon po ng mga kalamidad ang pondo na sa simula pa lang ay di na sapat. Halimbawa na lang itong si Paeng na sumalanta ng 7.5 bilyong pisong halaga ng ari-arian. Disaster has become a constant factor in budgeting, joining the likes of inflation as an assumption. And when the damage is great, no budget is resistant to amendments that will fund rehabilitation. And it will be a great abdication of our duty if the Senate will be impervious to these developments and if we fail to adjust spending in a manner that is fiscally responsible. We are hopeful that this will not be the case for this budget, especially when very early in the 19th Congress, both the House of Representatives and the Senate adopted the administration's medium-term fiscal framework, or MTFF, as the blueprint to our path out of the pandemic, providing the anchor or guideposts that help us be more focused in our deliberations and more incisive in our debates. We thank our cabinet officials and our economic managers, some of who are present today, for helping craft the medium-term fiscal framework of the administration. And naturally, the National Expenditure Program, or the NEP, follows the MTFF closely, with the President writing his budget message that the budget his government has proposed for next year will usher in an economic transformation towards inclusivity and sustainability. We support the agenda for prosperity it prescribes, and while we are buoyed by its dreams of a better, more prosperous Philippines, the road ahead is riddled with many difficulties. And amidst these anxious times, not only are the challenges manifold, they are intertwined and structural in nature. Realizing the agenda for prosperity that the executive has proposed demands that we are cognizant of these challenges and more. Only when we recognize that these systemic difficulties need nothing less than a whole-of-nation approach will we be able to achieve any headway. We agree with the President when he wrote, "We must transform our economy from one that is reactive, where our people suffer the effects of economic shocks, to one that is proactive, where our people are prepared and our economy is spared." Hindi po madaling baguhin ang mismong struktura ng ating ekonomiya, lalo na't marami na tayong hamon na kinakaharap. Ilang baitang pa ang kailangan akyatin bago natin maabot ang ating mga pangarap. Pursigido dapat tayo sa pag-implementa ng mga reforma. Kaya mahalaga na sa simula pa lamang nagkaisa na tayo upang ipinakitang plano ng Administrasyong Marcos. Hence, your committee has done its best, Mr. President, to make sure that every item in the budget we are proposing aligns fully with the MTFF. We would not have been able to accomplish this without your leadership and your team's leadership, and the timely transmission of the General Appropriations Bill to the Senate by the House of Representatives under the leadership of Speaker Martin Romualdez and our counterpart House Appropriations Committee Chair, Representative Elizalde Co, and Senior Vice Chairperson Stella Kimbo. Thanks are in order, as mentioned, to the Senate leadership, to you, Mr. President, to the Majority Leader, to our Senate Pro Temp, Lauren Legarda, and Minority Leaders, Senator Coco Pimentel. I am very grateful to my colleagues in the Committee on Finance, Senior Vice Chairpersons Lauren Legarda, Pia Cayetano and Amy Marcos, Vice Chairperson Cynthia Villar, Bato de la Rosa, Win Gatchalian, Bongo, Risa Ontiveros, Nancy Binay, Grace Po, Francis Tolentino, Mark Villar, and JV Ejercito for their cooperation, leadership, and support. The work of the Committee on Finance continued in earnest throughout the legislative recess because of the hard work of our Vice Chairpersons and colleagues here in the Senate. We extend our thanks also to the staff of the different senators, including my own, and to the Senate Secretariat, particularly to the Legislative Budget Research and Monitoring Office, or LBRMO, under Director General Irene Palanca, with the continued guidance of Attorney Yoli Deblon, the former Director General. They all contributed the necessary preparations and grunt work for us to tackle in plenary this important piece of legislation. Ginong Presidente, ang panukalang budget para sa 2023 ay aabot sa 5.268 trillion pesos. 1.5979 trillion nito ay automatic appropriations. Yung ipapasa ng Kongreso ay may halagang 4.259 trillion. Kasama nito ang programmed new appropriations at unprogrammed appropriations. Mababatid na, bagaman may bagong administrasyon, karamihan sa malalaking programa at proyekto ng nakaraang gobyerno ay tatakbo at papatuloy pa rin. Hudyat ito na kahit na nagkaroon ng palitan ng may hawak ng poder, walang tigil ang trabaho ng gobyerno para iangat ang antas at kalidad ng buhay ng bawat mamamayang Pilipino. Kasama po dito ang Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino Program o 4Ps kung saan sa nakarang halos isang dekada at kalahati nabibigyan ng conditional cash transfers ang ating mga mahihirap na kababayan bilang insentibo para paaralin nila ang kanilang mga anak at magpatingin sa doktor sa regular na panahon. Paiigtingin din ang Build, Build, Build ng nakaraang administrasyon at tatawagin itong Build Better More program para lalong gumanda ang infrastruktura ng bansa. Siyempre, tuloy-tuloy pa rin ang suporta para sa edukasyon ng ating mga kababayan tulad ng sa ilalim ng pag-implementa ng Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education at Tulong Trabaho Fund. Iilan lamang po ito sa mga programa na maaasahan ng ating mga kababayan bilang tulong sa kanila mula sa ating gobyerno. Hindi rin may pagkakait na may banta pa rin ang pandemya sa ating lipunan, Mr. President. Kaya minabuti pa rin ng inyong komite na may sapat na suporta para lalong lumakas pa ang ating sistemang pangkalusugan. Gayunpaman, dahil laganap ang mga senyales na patapos na po ang pandemya, pinagtuunan din natin ng pansin at pondo ang muling pagbangon ng ating ekonomiya at ang pagpapalakas sa kapasidad ng ating mga ahensya at institusyon para makapaghain sila ng mas magandang serbisyo sa ating mga kababayan. As mentioned, Mr. President, our committee report hews very closely with the 8-point near-term socioeconomic agenda as enshrined in the MTFF and supports the major priorities of the Marcos administration. Food security is one of these foremost priorities. With no less than the President himself holding the agriculture portfolio, the DA and its attached agencies and the Department of Agrarian Reform will receive an over 30% increase from the previous year's allocation. Significant funding remains for the DA's national programs for rice, corn, high-value crops development, organic agriculture, livestock, farm-to-market roads, and urban and peri-urban agriculture. Under the stewardship of our Vice Chairperson, Cynthia Villar, changes were made within the DA's proposed budget to support key initiatives, including the establishment of cold examination facilities in agriculture, or CEFAs, in Angat, Bulacan for Luzon, Toledo, Cebu City for Visayas, and Sasa Wharf, Davao City for Mindanao. These are for the in-depth inspection of containerized agri-fishery products, critical to ensuring our food safety and safeguarding against smuggling. In line with this, funds will also be devoted for the establishment of a DA-wide field inspectorate office who will act as the agency's primary anti-smuggling enforcement and regulation arm. Several hatcheries that have been established via legislation will also receive significant funding in the coming year. And changes were also made to support the R&D, extension, or applied research activities of several attached agencies of the DA. To combat the continuing scourge of the African swine fever, ASF, to the country. More resources were appropriated to the National Meat Inspection Service for the procurement of testing kits and laboratory equipment, training for sample collection for ASF surveillance program in slaughterhouses, and capacity building for meat testing using qPCR tests. Increases were also made to the Dairy Industry Development Program of National Dairy Authority, dovetailing with the support provided to the Philippine Carabao Center for herd buildup of genetically improved buffaloes. Paigtingin naman natin ang mga programa ng gobyerno sa pang-ayuda para sa mga mahihirap nating kababayan upang makaraos sila habang kinakaharap ang patuloy na pagtaas ng mga presyo ng mga bilihin. Bukod sa patuloy na pag-implementa ng 4Ps, may dagdag na pondo para sa protective services for individuals and families in difficult circumstances ng DSWD. Napapaloob dito ang Assistance to Individuals in Crisis Situations o AICS, ang Assistance to Communities in Need o ACN Community-Based Program, at iba pang mga programa na nagbibigay ng food assistance, food packs, transportation, medical burial assistance, assistance to students, cash food for work, at iba pang mga ayuda. Nandyan din ang Sustainable Livelihood Program o SLP para magkaroon ng pagkakakita ng mga kapuspalad nating kababayan. Hindi rin ititigil ang mga emergency employment programs ng DOLE or Department of Labor tulad ng Integrated Livelihood Programs or DILP, tulong panghanap buhay sa ating Disadvantaged Workers Program o TUPAD, at ng Government Internship Program at ng Adjustment Measures Program o AMP. Bilang pansalag naman sa patuloy na pagtaas ng presyo ng petrolyo, magkakaroon pa rin ng subsidiya, financial assistance of fuel vouchers sa ilalim ng DOTR para sa mga owners at operators ng PUV, taxi, tricycle at mga ride-hailing services sa ilalim ng DA para sa mga magsasaka at mangingisda na kasama sa registry system for basic sectors in agriculture. Sa tulong naman po ni Senior Vice Chair Amy Marcos, mabibigyan at madadagdagan ang iba't ibang proyekto at programa ng DSWD at ng mga attached agencies ng mga ito. Unang-una yung pag-implementa ng Centenarians Act, dagdag na pondo para sa Juvenile Justice and Welfare Council para sa operasyon ng Bahay Pag-asa, dagdag na pondo para sa National Anti-Poverty Commission or NAPSI, suporta para sa MOE ng National Commission on Indigenous Peoples, suporta para sa operations ng National Commission of Senior Citizens at paglalaan ng pondo para sa Social Pension for Indigent Senior Citizens na dinoble sa pagsasabatas ng RA 11916 sponsored by no less than our Majority Leader Senator Joel Villanueva. Pondo para sa Council for Welfare of Children o CWC para lalo nilang matupad ang kanilang mandato sa mga local government units. Meron ding budget para sa bagong ahensya na National Authority for Childcare or NACC na nabuo ayon sa RA 11642 na kilala dati bilang Inter-Country Adoption Board. Mr. President, we are also cognizant of the immense damage caused by recent typhoons and earthquakes and the difficulties hard-hit communities have to endure just to recover. While no government has the power to change one's geography or the weather, ours aims to do its utmost to prepare our communities and have funds on standby to help the affected communities just to get back again if ever they are hit by natural calamities. This is why your committee affirmed or increased the appropriations proposed for the Quick Response Funds or QRFs of the DA, the DepEd, the DOH, Bureau of Fire Protection, the Philippine National Police, the Department of National Defense, Office of Civil Defense, DPWH, and the DSWD. We have also assured the resources devoted to the National Disaster Risk Reduction Management Fund, amounting to 31 billion. This includes the appropriations for the Marawi Siege Victims Compensation Fund. Funds have also been confirmed with the help of our Vice Chair, Senator Risa Hontiveros, in the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development, or DSUD, specifically the NHA for a housing assistance program for calamity victims, amounting to 1 billion pesos. Ngayon naganap ng patuparin ang face-to-face classes. Kailangan natin siguraduhin ligtas ang ating mga mag-aaral sa kanilang pagbabalik sa silid-aralan. Pagkatapos din ng halos 2.5 taon na nasa lockdown, marapat lamang na dekalidad ang pagtuturo sa kanila at kapaki-pakinabang ang kanilang muling pagpasok sa paaralan. Halimbawa po, sa rekomendasyon ni Senior Vice Chairperson Pia Cayetano at ng mismong DepEd, sinigurado natin na pwedeng gamitin ng lahat ng paaralan mula kinder hanggang grade 12 ang kanilang maintenance and other operating expenses or MOOE para magkaroon ng tamang bentilasyon ang mga silid-aralan, laboratorio at ibang learning spaces ng paaralan, para makabili at gumamit ng mga COVID-19 test kits para sa faculty at staff, para may tamang respiratory at hand hygiene at rehabilitation ng mga water at sanitation facilities. Para din mas madaling makapag-enroll ang ating mag-aaral, pinapagtibay din ng inyong komite ang iba't ibang student financial assistance programs at scholarships na matagal nang pinapatakbo ng gobyerno, again, through the leadership of Senior Vice Chair Pia Cayetano and Vice Chair Sherwin Gatchalian. The UACTEA program or the free college amounting to 54.46 billion, 18.7 under the SUCs or state universities and colleges, and 4.9 billion under TESDA, and the remaining 30 billion under the CHED or Commission on Higher Education. Senior high school voucher program, education service contracting for junior high school, student financial assistance program or STUFAPS, joint delivery vouchers for SHS or senior high school technical vocational livelihood specialization, at ang private education student financial assistance o PESFA. Scholarships and training will still be available for our countrymen to improve their skill sets and enhance their chances of landing quality jobs or lucrative earning opportunities. Under TESDA, this includes the Special Training for Employment Program or STEP, the Training for Work Scholarship Program or TWSP, and the Tulong Trabaho Scholarship Program. Upon the recommendation of Senior Vice Chairperson Lauren Legarda, we also distributed funds for these programs and other similar training initiatives to the regional offices of TESDA for quicker disbursement and better utilization of funds. Upon the recommendation of Vice Chairperson Senator Grace Poe, we realigned funds within the Department of Transportation to support the social support component of the PUV modernization program. This includes such initiatives as the DOTR TESDA Super Scholar program and the DOTR Dole and Super Nur program, where affected PUV drivers can learn new skills. Laganap din po ang mga ulat na may seryosong pagkukulang ng mga school buildings sa buong bansa. Hindi po ito mareresolba sa madaling panahon, ngunit sinisimulan po natin ang mga hakbang para hindi na kailangan magklase sa construction site, sa ilalim ng puno o kung saan-saan pa po. Bukod sa minamandato natin ng DepEd na magsumite sa Kongreso ng listahan ng mga school buildings na itatayo pa lang at ng isang Basic Education Facilities Master Plan para masusi nating mabantayan kung lumilit nga ba ang classroom shortage. Pinapayagan din natin magrenta ang DepEd sa mga pasilidad ng mga pribadong paaralan na hindi ginagamit para punan ang anumang pagkukulang sa silid-aralan. Naging talamak din ang mga issue hinggil sa mental health ng ating mga mag-aaral habang nasa lockdown sila. Kaya tiniyak po natin sa panukalang budget na mag-iimplementa ang DepEd ng malawakang mental health policy for students and personnel alinsunod sa Mental Health Act or Republic Act 11036. Inaatasan din ng DepEd na magkaroon ng pool of registered guidance counselors at mental health program administrators na silang maghahanap at mag-iensayo ng mga guidance designates at peer facilitators sa mga paaralan. Maalala po natin, Mr. President, na bago pa tayong nagpandemya, lumabas ang mga ulat tungkol sa mababang performance ng ating mga mag-aaral sa PISA or Program for International Student Assessment at iba pang mga pag-aaral tungkol sa kalidad ng ating edukasyon. Lalong lumala ang problema nitong pandemya kung saan ayon sa World Bank naging malubha ang learning poverty sa bansa. 9 out of 10 daw ang mga 10-year-old students na hindi makapagbasa o nakakapag-unawa ng isang simpleng kwento o babasahin. Kaya nagtatrabaho ang DepEd, ang CHED at ang TESDA kasama ang inyong Kongreso at Senado para masimulan ang mga pagbabago at reforma para pagandahin ang ating sistemang pang-edukasyon. Halimbawa, sa ilalim ng DepEd, may malaking pondo para sa in-service training ng ating mga guro, school administrators at non-teaching staff. Idinidiin din ng ating panukalan na dapat mapunan ng DepEd ang mga vacant positions nito sa teaching at non-teaching positions bago mag-December 31, 2023. Para din masimulan ang trabaho nito para aralin ng masinsinan ng estado ng ating sistemang pang-edukasyon at repasuhin kung kinakailangan ang mga nauukol na batas. Minabuti po ni Vice Chairperson Gatchalian na may sapat na pondo para sa pangalawang Congressional Commission on Education or EDCOM 2. At sa tulong po nila Senior Vice Chair Cayetano at Vice Chair Gatchalian, sinigurado na may pondo na magagamit para sa mga textbooks at instructional materials para sa mga learners with disabilities. Nagpasok din po ng pondo sa Early Childhood Care and Development or ECCD Council para sa pagtayo ng mga National Child Development Centers or NCDCs. May dagdag na pondo rin para sa National Book Development Board para sa iba't ibang proyekto at programa nito tulad ng Book Nook, Children's Book Summit, participation in international book fairs and trade engagements, Creative Nation Grant, Publication Grant, at translation subsidies. Mr. President, the return to face-to-face classes is among the clearest signs that the return to normalcy is near. But this should not mean a reversion to complacency. Your committee has taken steps to ensure that as the economy opens up, we continue to strengthen our healthcare system. For instance, while there is an abundance of COVID-19 vaccines currently in the country, your committee has affirmed that funds will be available for the purchase of vaccines for COVID-19, possibly even for monkeypox and other emerging diseases. We have also ensured that funds will be available for public health emergency benefits and allowances of our healthcare workers. The work of building up our healthcare system should now resume in earnest, and we will do that with the significant funding for PhilHealth and for the entire Department of Health, up to 315 billion pesos. We worked with Senior Vice Chair Pia Cayetano to provide funding support to the operations of various DOH regional hospitals, specialty hospitals, several health centers, and other programs of the DOH, including Mariano Marcos Memorial Hospital, Baguio General Hospital and Medical Center, Batangas Medical Center, Bicol Regional Hospital and Medical Center, Bicol Medical Center, Western Visayas Medical Center, Vicente Soto Memorial Center, Eastern Visayas, among others, Mr. President. It's a long list of hospitals. We've also worked to help increase the carrying capacity of the colleges of medicine across different SUCs, including UP Manila, and those with nursing and allied health programs. We also provided funding support for state universities and colleges with pending applications for medical programs and lodged resources within CHED as a seed fund for development of more medical schools in state universities and colleges. Medical scholarships under the Doktor para sa Bayan were also funded, a pet measure of our majority leader and Senior Vice Chair Cayetano. We agreed that improving our infrastructure is key to the economic transformation the administration aims to achieve. This is why we are glad that the Build program of the previous administration will continue in the next 6 years as the Build Better More initiative, which will help drive economic growth. Your committee retained the increase of the appropriations for development and rehabilitation of various airports across the country under the DOTR. Funding has also been affirmed to boost the safety capacities or capabilities within our maritime sector and to continue the improvements in our railway system, which covers such projects as the MRT-3 Rehabilitation Project, the LRT-1 Cavite Extension, the North-South Commuter Sub-Railway System, the Philippine National Railways South Long Haul Project, and the Metro Manila Subway. Road transport and the pedestrian network will also receive support, such as in the EDSA Busway Project, the EDSA Greenways Project, and even the stalled Cebu BRT Project. The support for building up systems for active transport, like bicycles and safe pathways, will also continue. The committee has also affirmed the increases in the funding under the Network Development Program of the DPWH for road widening projects, for paving rough roads, for the construction of diversion roads, missing road links, flyovers, interchanges, underpasses, and the like. The Bridge Building and Improvement Program will also receive significant funding. Packages of priority road projects under the Convergence and Special Support Program will also be funded extensively that are consistent with the plans and strategies of agencies like NEDA, DOT, DTI, and the DND. Bilang suporta sa ating ekonomiya, nakatuon din ang komite sa pamumuno ni Vice Chairperson Mark Villar sa mga programang tutulong sa ating MSMEs or Micro and Small Medium Enterprises. Sa ilalim po ng DTI, tuloy pa rin ang One Town, One Product or OTOP Next Gen, ang shared services facilities, ang pagtayo ng mga negosyo centers, ang Rural Agro-Enterprise Partnership for Inclusive Development and Rapid Growth, ang Malikhaing Pinoy Program bilang suporta sa pag-implementa ng bagong Philippine Creative Industries Development Act or RA 11904 at ang pondo para sa pagbabago at pag-asenso program na pautang sa ating mga MSMEs. Mr. President, many throughout the pandemic discovered that with a stable internet connection, they could earn a living as part of the gig economy from the comforts of their home. To support this growing online freelancing industry in the Philippines, our proposal also affirms funding for several upskilling and reskilling initiatives. For instance, the DICT has several initiatives focused on building up the country's digital workforce and laying the groundwork for our ICT industry to further develop. Such programs include 182 million for its digital workforce program, which includes the formulation of ICT competency standards, the development of a Philippine competency framework, digital literacy training, and government information officer scholarships. Funds for ICT workforce upskilling and reskilling funds for ICT industry development programs, including the establishment of ICT councils and capacitating more LGUs to become digital cities. Funds for Digital Jobs PH, which covers trainings for MSMEs and out-of-school youth, and funds for the establishment of Tech for Ed hubs and digital transformation centers, which will serve as community ICT resource centers for select LGU beneficiaries. Sinusuportahan din natin ang panukalang digital transformation ng ating gobyerno para mas mabilis at mas mabisa itong makapaghain ng serbisyo sa taong bayan. Nangunguna po dito ang DICT na may e-government program kung saan tinutulungan niya ang iba't ibang ahensya para gawing digitalisado ang kanilang mga proseso. Kasama dito ang paglunsad ng IBPLS o ang Integrated Business Permits and Licensing System sa mas maraming LGU para mas mabilis silang makapag-issue ng business permits, building permits at ibang permit. Napapaloob din dito ang pagbuo ng mga sistema para makagamit ng mga digital payment systems ang ating mga LGU. Bukod dito, tuloy-tuloy ang National Government Data Center Infrastructure Project na magsisilbing common launching point para sa mga ahensya ng gobyerno tulad ng web hosting, server co-location, network connectivity at iba pa. Tuloy-tuloy din ang pagsigurado ng DICT na bawat sulok ng bansa ay konektado sa internet sa pamamagitan ng National Broadband Plan at ng Free Internet Access Program. At sa rekomendasyon ng ating Vice Chair, Senator Grace po, naglagay rin tayo ng special provision para bigyan ang DICT ng kakayahan para makapagbigay ng insentibo sa mga LGU community service providers na pwedeng mag-develop at mag-finance ng mga tinatawag na last mile facilities sa mga paaralan, resettlement sites, transport hubs, at iba pang mga public spaces. Another major priority of the administration is the reopening of our tourism industry, which was among the hardest hit throughout the pandemic. The country now faces an auspicious opportunity to relaunch its beautiful sites and destinations to the rest of the world. This is why in the President's budget message, it was underscored that the branding campaign for Philippine tourism will be revitalized through the initiative of Vice Chairperson Nancy Binay, who also chairs the Senate Tourism Committee. We increase the budgets of several programs of the DOT to ensure that the requisite plans are formulated, the relevant trainings are conducted, the proper standards and regulations are enforced, and attractive tourism products are matched with the appropriate markets. Again, through the help of Vice Chair Binay, additional funds were realigned to support the operations of the 16 regional offices of the DOT, and funds were also set aside for the Intramuros Administration and the National Parks Development Committee. Napakadaming destinasyon ang pwedeng bisitahin sa buong bansa, Mr. President. Pero bukod sa mga ito, makakatulong sa ating turismo kung ganap natin payabungin at ipagmalaki ang ating kultura at kasaysayan o culture and heritage. Kaya nagpapasalamat po tayo kay Senior Vice Chair Pia Cayetano dahil nadagdagan ang pondo ng National Commission on Culture and the Arts, NCCA, ang National Historical Commission of the Philippines, NHCP, ang National Library at ang National Archives. May dagdag na kabuang pondo para sa mga programa ng NCCA tulad ng Centro Rizal, Filipino Heritage Festival, support to creative industries, cultural mapping, Philippine participation at the Venice Biennale, at ang conservation ng Metropolitan Theater. May dagdag na pondo din para pagandahin ng National Museum hindi lamang ang main complex sa Pedro Hill, pati na rin ang mga kabayan, burial caves sa Benguet, ang Rocha House sa Tagbilaran, Bohol, ang Santuario de Nuestra Señora di Sasay sa Taal, Batangas, at ang Fort San Pedro sa Iloilo City. Kapag matapos ang pagsasaayos ng mga lugar na ito, bawat isa sa kanila ay maaaring maging tourist destination. Our proposed budget also follows through on the ongoing drive for local communities to have a more direct role to play in their own development through devolution and decentralization. For next year, the National Tax Allotment, formerly the IRA, or the Internal Revenue Allotment, that will be appropriated to LGUs across the nation will amount to 820.269 billion pesos. Meanwhile, the annual block grant for the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao is worth 64.756 billion. I know this is close to the heart of our presiding officer. Both figures are smaller than their equivalents in 2022 because of lower tax collections in the previous years during the pandemic. Nonetheless, we are hopeful that they will go directly to the communities that will benefit the most from their use, and these amounts will increase as the country's economy opens up. No less than the President believes this to be true, such that he requested through the DA to include special provisions and specific provisions that ensure the direct release of funds to the BARM to implement the national programs on rice, corn, livestock, high-value crops development, national organic Agriculture and the updating of the Registry of Agriculture, and as well as for fuel assistance to the fisherfolk. Patuloy din po ang ating tulong para sa mga ahensyang magtatanggol at magproprotekta sa bansa. Halimbawa, dinagdagan sa tulong at liderato ni Vice Chairperson Senator Bato de la Rosa, dinagdagan ang pondo ng DND OSEC para sa iba't ibang pangangailangan tulad ng pagtatag ng 3 bagong opisina. Magbibigay din ng suporta sa ahensya para makalahok at makasama sa mga defense cooperation agreements, at naglaan din ng pondo para sa revised AFP modernization program sa pagtayo ng mga mobilization centers sa Ilocos Region at Central Luzon, sa operational expenses ng forward operating base sa Subic, sa equipment ng data center sa Fernando Air Base sa Lipa City, sa pag-procure ng mga armor vests, ballistic helmets, night vision goggles at iba pang kagamitan, at pagpapatakbo ng mga bagong barko ng Philippine Navy, gamot ng mga pasyente ng Veterans Memorial Medical Center at para sa National Security Council, Government Arsenal, Office of Civil Defense, maging sa OPAP or Office of the Presidential Advisor on Peace and Reconciliation. Nagbuhos din tayo ng suporta para sa proyekto at programa ng mga law enforcement agencies tulad ng panukalang Anti-Drug Operations Command Center ng Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency o PDEA, ng bagong headquarters building ng Philippine National Police at ng digitalization at civil works ng National Bureau of Investigation or NBI. Dinagdagan din po ang pondo para sa Supreme Court at mga korte para sa hazard pay ng mga lower court judges at sweldo ng mga trial judges at large at 50 trial judges at large. Ganito rin ang ginagawa para sa Sandigan Bayan sa CA or Court of Appeals at Court of Tax Appeals, as well as for the Office of the Solicitor General para sa sweldo at benepisyo ng mga prosecution attorneys. Mr. President, we also hope to support our diplomatic corps so that they can project a better image of the Philippines and that we as a nation can play a bigger role in world affairs. Significant funding as contributions will be set aside as contributions to international organizations for the hosting of regional or international conferences. We also augmented the DFA's budget for the commemoration of the 125th anniversary of the proclamation of Philippine independence, for our participation in the Osaka Expo in 2025, and for the promotion of Philippine specialty and heritage products and crafts. Mainly through the intervention of Senior Vice Chairperson Senator Lauren Legarda, we have made additions to the Philippine Studies program of the DFA as well as part of its diplomacy program. Patuloy din po natin aalagaan ang ating mga overseas Filipino workers o OFWs, lalong-lalo na may naitatag na bagong department, ang DMW or Department of Migrant Workers. At sa pamumuno po ni Vice Chairperson JV Ejercito, nagtulungan ang komite para suportahan ang bagong DMW para sa operasyon ng mga regional offices nito at ng OFW Hospital at para makapag-hire ng dagdag na overseas employment adjudicators at makapagbukas na dagdag na migrant workers offices na dating tawag ay POLO o Philippine Overseas Labor Offices. At sa rekomendasyon naman po ni Vice Chairperson Francis Tolentino, dinagdagan natin ang pondo ng Commission on Filipinos Overseas para makalahok sila sa mga activities ng Interagency Council Against Trafficking o IACAT at may dagdag na pondo rin para sa Overseas Workers Welfare Administration o OWA. Mr. President, our proposed budget also makes good on our commitment to preserve our environment and to pursue a sustainable form of development for the benefit of future generations. For instance, work will continue for the rehabilitation of Manila Bay, of Boracay Island, and 5 so-called green economy models or GEMs, namely Puerto Galera, Coron, El Nido, Siargao, and Panglao. The DNR will be able to pursue its work on biodiversity conservation, coastal and marine ecosystem management, clean air and water, solid waste management, and responsible mining. Through the leadership of Vice Chairperson Cynthia Villar, we have included additional funding for the construction of 15 storage facilities in various CENROS or Community Environment Officers nationwide offices for the National Land Titling Program so that we will have consolidated cadastral maps and land tenure profiles and better land records management overall, and for the hiring of more forest protection officers and the construction and repair of storage facilities used for the intensified forest protection and anti-illegal logging activities of the government. The budget also aims to plant the seeds for our future sources of development and prosperity by supporting initiatives focused on science, technology, and innovation. For instance, the National Economic and Development Authority, or NEDA, will be receiving more funding this year for the implementation of the Philippine Innovation Act, and these funds will be used for the Secretariat Services of the National Innovation Council, and the lion's share will go to grants for innovation programs and activities. And again, through the interventions of Vice Chairperson Francis Tolentino, the DOST and its attached agencies will also receive more funding. And so will the Philippine Space Agency, or PhilSA, for it to continue working for more Filipino-built satellites to be put into orbit. And again, in collaboration with Senior Vice Chair Pia Cayetano, we ensure that all SUCs will receive additional funding for research and innovation programs, particularly those focused on futures thinking. Paigtingin pa natin ang suporta para sa ating mga atleta, lalo na't patuloy na umarangkada at nananalo pa rin sila sa mga international sports competitions. Sa tulong po ni Senior Vice Chair Cayetano, makakatanggap ng dagdag na pondo ang National Academy for Sports sa pamamagitan ng National Sports for All Grassroots Centerpiece Program ng Philippine Sports Commission. Ito ay para sa mga programa ng NAS at para makapagbigay ng mga scholarship grants at expenses subsidies. Sa tulong po ni Vice Chairperson Bongo, nais nating maglaan ng dagdag na pondo para sa Philippine Sports Commission bilang suporta sa ating mga national athletes na nag-iensayo para sa Paris Olympics, sa Southeast Asian Games, sa Asian Indoor Martial Arts Games, sa World Combat Games, sa World Beach Games, sa Asian Beach Games, sa ASEAN Para Games at sa Asian Para Games. Dagdag po nito, may pondo ang gobyerno para suportahan ang pag-host ng bansa ng FIBA World Cup sa darating na taon. Sa gitna ng kalulalulang mga numero sa budget na hitik sa mga zero, mas mainam sigurong balangkasin on a daily basis. How much the government will spend and borrow every day next year gives a much clearer picture of the huge funding gap which must be plugged by our borrowings. On a daily basis, the government will be spending 14.4 billion pesos, of which only 10 billion is supportable by revenues. The 4.4 billion is the deficit that must be financed by debt. Yan ang patak ng metro natin kada 24 oras. Bago lumubog ang araw, kailangan makalikom ng 7.2 billion pesos. At bago sumikat naman, dapat makakamada ng 7.2 billion muli. These numbers are easy to memorize, and they should be a sobering reminder that against many requests being asked of the government, that there are no only resources to fund them. Ganong kahalaga ang pagpapalakas ng ekonomiya, at ang budget ay isang instrumento sa pagkamit nito, upang ang sigla nito ay magdulot ng trabaho at buwis. All of the above call for smart budgeting, where nothing is wasted or delayed in budget execution, when the hope and promise these appropriations bring is waylaid by procurement anomalies. Smart budgeting is what your committee has endeavored to do, at para dito taos puso kaming nagpapasalamat sa inyo, Mr. President, Senate President Miguel Zubiri, Senate President Pro Temp Loren Legarda, Majority Leader Senator Joel Villanueva at Minority Leader Senator Coco Pimentel. At salamat din sa ating mga kasamahan sa komite, Senior Vice Chairpersons Pia Cayetano, Amy Marcos, Loren Legarda, at Vice Chairperson Cynthia Villar, Bato de la Rosa, Win Gatchalian, Bongo, Risa Ontiveros, Nancy Binay, Grace po, Francis Tolentino, Mark Villar, JV Ejercito. At syempre sa iba nating kapwa-senador na nagsipag kahit nung panahon ng break, sila Senator Alan Peter Cayetano, Francis Chis Escudero, Jinggoy Ejercito Estrada, Lito Lapid, Robin Hood Padilla, Ramon Bong Revilla Jr. at Rafi Tulfo. Lahat po sila ay pumunta at nagtanong sa mga hearing at pinaganda ang takbo ng ating budget process. Lumahok po silang lahat, kaya on time po tayo sa paghahain at schedule nitong panukalang budget, Mr. President. Nagpapasalamat din ulit tayo sa Senate Secretariat, sa LBRMO, kay Director Irene Palanca at kay Attorney Yoli Doblon para sa kanilang tulong. At napapaloob sa panukalang budget ang mga plano natin para sa mga susunod na taon. Taglay niya ang mga pangarap natin para sa isang mas magandang bukas para sa lahat. Noong nakarang kampanya, napalakas ang sigaw ng sambayanang Pilipino na bagong Pilipinas, bagong mukha. Dinidinggin po natin ito, kaya sa pamamagitan ng panukalang budget, pinapakita na handang tumulong ang Senado para magkatotoo ang hangarin na ito. Siyempre, hindi masusolusyonan ang mga problema ng ating bansa agad-agad. Kailanman hindi ito magagawa sa isang buwan o isang taon lamang o kaya marahil sa isang administrasyon lamang. Ngunit mahalaga na ang proseso ng pagbabago ay nagsisimula at patuloy na po. Papasok na nga ang kabanata kung saan sama-sama tayong babangon muli. Napapaloob sa ating panukala ang mga unang hakbang. Maraming salamat, Mr. President, at mga ginagalang nating mga kasamahan.
Thank you, Senator Sani Angara, the chairperson of the Senate Committee on Finance. I was told that the next to co-sponsor the measure is the Senate President Pro Temp, no other than Senator Loren Legarda. Senator Legarda, you are recognized.
Mr. President, with the permission and support of the chair, the hardworking chair of the Finance Committee, Senator Sani Angara, I respectfully request my fellow senators' consideration of the 2023 budgets of the Department of Foreign Affairs, Department of Labor and Employment, which includes the Technical Education Skills Development Authority, TESDA. The past 2 years have been challenging for many of us. The COVID-19 pandemic brought the world to an unprecedented level of societal disruption. The world was faced with enforced lockdowns, restricted movements, prohibition on traveling. With the global economy at a standstill, industries were devastated, millions of jobs were lost. As of November 7, 2022, the virus has affected more than 4 million individuals, claimed the lives of more than 64,000. The country's poverty incidence also rose to 23.7% in the first half of 2021 from 21.1% in the same period of 2018. Gross domestic product fell by the worst contraction of GDP since World War II, falling by 9.5% in 2020. At the onset of the pandemic, the Philippine government responded with a 4-pillar socioeconomic strategy against COVID. Fiscal measures which provided emergency support for vulnerable groups, which included Bayanihan 1, 2, the Corporate Recovery and Tax Incentives for Enterprises Act, the CREATE, the monetary and macro-financial measures to gather resources to fight COVID-19, monetary actions to keep the economy afloat, other financing support for emergency response and recovery initiatives, and an economic recovery program to create jobs and sustain growth, which waived certain permits, licenses, or other requirements to fast-track high-impact investments and create jobs. As we overcome this health crisis and implement economic relief measures, we prepare to provide essential funds and protect livelihoods in the face of abrupt income losses. The subcommittee report aims to promote security and build back better by assessing measures that focus on potential targets for stimulus spending that may offer near-term benefits in terms of job creation and long-term outcomes for sustainability and resilience. For DOLE, which includes TESDA, the subcommittee recommended a 2023 budget of 49.223 billion. Throughout the pandemic, the International Labor Organization reported that in 2020, 1/4 of the total employment in the country, or about 10.9 million workers, would face prolonged job disruption. In September this year, the labor force survey of the Philippine Statistics Authority showed that the unemployment rate stood at 5%, or 2.50 million unemployed Filipinos, with 18.1% of the population, or around 19.99 million Filipinos living below the poverty threshold. With the prevailing challenges in the economy, a 7.7% inflation rate in October 2022, and a 13.517 trillion debt as of September 2022, the DOLE contributes through various interventions such as employment, training, livelihood to fortify the capacity and income earning ability of individuals and families. These include immediate policy responses that can help ease the financial burden accompanying reduced work hours and help sustain household consumption. These responses also ensure basic social and economic protection during the crisis and recovery phases. The recommended budget allocation of DOLE is as follows: 27.252 billion, Office of the Secretary, 55.586 million for the Institute of Labor Studies, 275.591 million for the National Conciliation Mediation Board, 1.383 billion for the National Labor Relations Commission, 271.402 million for the National Wages and Productivity Commission, 1.750 billion for the Professional Regulation Commission, 18.236 billion for the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority. In the identification of livelihood and emergency employment programs for the Tulong Pangkabuhayan, Panghanap Buhay sa ating disadvantaged or displaced workers to PAD beneficiaries in particular, DOLE shall give priority to the following in the order of preference: indigent families under the National Household Targeting System for Poverty Reduction, informal sector families, those under the next lower poverty level as determined by DSWD, which now includes as an amendment indigenous people, agrarian reform beneficiaries, and women who do unpaid care and domestic work, as they too may be considered as vulnerable members of society. The DOLE has attained a utilization rate of 95.56% or 19,408,748,690.92 out of the 20,310,469,636.72 allotments. The unutilized amount of 901,720,945.80 or 4.44% for the implementation of the three regular programs: TUPAD, DOLE, Integrated Livelihood Program, DILIP, GIP, Government Internship Program. It was able to employ 3,008,494 beneficiaries, achieving DOLE's contribution to the government's agenda of inclusive growth through massive job generation and poverty reduction. For TESDA, we distributed a portion of the lump sum amount under the central office to the regional offices to support TESDA to decentralize the funds and improve its rate of utilization of the budget. The distribution of Training for Work Scholarship Program, the Special Training for Employment Program, the Tulong Trabajo Scholarship Program, and the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education takes into consideration the regional underemployment, unemployment, job vacancies, absorptive capacity, poverty incidence, number of scholars, and other criteria to ensure equitable distribution among regions. TESDA is in a leading position to help the government improve the lives of the poor and reduce poverty in the country. Through TESDA, government agencies and private organizations collaborate in providing training packages that complement and address the needs of a community. The introduction of innovative ways to enhance skills and provide additional learning is consistent with TESDA's objectives of social equity for workforce inclusion and poverty reduction. From 2018 to September 2022, TESDA has had 7.68 million technical vocational education and training or TVET enrollees, 7.13 million TVET graduates, 93.1% certification rate. At the beginning of the pandemic, PSA reported that unemployment peaked at 17.7% in April 2020, with 7.3 million Filipinos out of the workforce. The following year, in August, the unemployment rate improved to 8.1% or equivalent to 3.88 million people. However, the Asian Development Bank observed that while the rate of unemployment has improved, low-quality jobs are emerging. The increasing number of self-employed individuals and people in the informal sector was deemed to be less stable. The pandemic has affected 1.7 million wage and salary jobs in private establishments, whereas unemployment or employment in the informal sector rose to about 435,000. My dear colleagues, it is within our mandate to enact a policy that will address the intergenerational poverty that has become a major constraint in achieving sustainable growth and the overall development of our country. It is imperative that in support of the budget of DOLE and its attached agencies, we ensure that we determine the root causes of problems in labor in order to identify appropriate solutions. To the Department of Foreign Affairs in its budget, the subcommittee submitted the 2023 budget of the DFA at 20.48 billion pesos, an additional 181.48 million from the 20.30 billion proposed budget in the gap. The COVID-19 pandemic has also shown the value of international cooperation and collaboration. The many ties between nations create collective health risks that are difficult to manage independently. The economic and social costs are further evidence of a shared fate. Agreeing on global rules and standards supports consistency of information, helps promote effective practices, forms the basis for shared understanding and mutual trust. The interdependence of trade and travel exposes mutual vulnerabilities. So it is essential to emphasize that cooperation at various levels, bilateral, regional, international, is crucial to effectively allowing nations to enhance alert systems, data sharing, research, as well as production and distribution of medical and public health countermeasures. We also face national, regional, and global security issues such as increasing challenges brought about by climate change, ongoing conflicts around the world, as well as global economic challenges. The DFA is realizing the country's foreign policy objectives by preserving national security, promoting economic security and cultural diplomacy, and ensuring the safety and welfare of Filipinos overseas. Diplomacy facilitated vaccine procurement and secured humanitarian assistance worth approximately 23.409 million US dollars as of September 14, 2022 from international partners. Through DFA, we have gained international support for the arbitral reward on the South China Sea, as well as protection for migrant workers in a campaign to reform the kafala system in Gulf countries and provide assistance to our working kababayans overseas. The DFA was crucial in facilitating the COVID-induced repatriation of 462,065 overseas Filipinos, the provision of assistance to stranded migrants and tourists at the height of the pandemic. Even during the ongoing transition to the newly established Department of Migrant Workers, the DFA also assisted in bringing home 451 overseas Filipinos from Ukraine, 70 from Sri Lanka, 350 from Kuwait. It is worth mentioning that the DFA assists the needs of our migrant workers in instances where the presence of the Office of DMW is not yet available. The DFA continues to extend appropriate assistance to overseas Filipinos in distress through the Legal Assistance Fund and the Assistance to Nationals Fund. Colleagues, men and women of the DFA, some 2,866 strong, serve as the representatives of the Philippine government abroad, safeguard the welfare of some 10.689 million Filipinos overseas. Thus, I propose that the DFA's 2023 GAB allocation be increased by an additional 181.48 million to augment the needs of the Philippine Studies Program, provisions of consular services, including the issuance of passports, visas, and other consular documents, and the International Commitments Fund. The additional budget will be lodged under the Office of the Secretary. We have forged partnerships with several countries like Spain, Germany, Singapore for the Philippine Studies Program, and these provide access to other nationalities to study Philippine culture and society. The proposed budget allocation of the DFA is as follows: OSEC from 20.175 billion to 20.3 743 million for UNESCO Philippines, 37.251 million for the Presidential Commission for Visiting Forces. My dear colleagues, let us support the budget of DFA to strengthen its position for the protection and promotion of the interests of the Filipino people around the world. With that, I humbly ask for plenary consideration of the 2023 budgets of the Department of Foreign Affairs, the DFA, the Department of Labor and Employment, the DOLE, including the Technical Education or TESDA. I earnestly hope that these will merit the approval of this august chamber. Of course, my gratitude to the leadership of this chamber, Senate President Miguel Zubiri, and the very hardworking as well Majority Leader, and all the vice chairs and the members of this chamber. Thank you, Mr. President. Once again, I am grateful to the chair of this committee for giving us the opportunity to help in this gargantuan work. Thank you.
Thank you very much to our Senate President Pro Tempore for her sponsorship speech.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this juncture, I move that we recognize the Senior Vice Chairperson of the Committee on Finance, no other than the distinguished lady from the city of Taguig and Pateros, Senator Pia Cayetano. I move that she be recognized, Mr.
Senator
President.
Pia Cayetano is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise today to co-sponsor the 2023 budget as the Senior Vice Chairperson of the Committee on Finance, in charge of the budget of the following: Department of Health and its attached agencies and corporations, Department of Education and its attached agencies, the Commission on Higher Education, state universities and colleges, cultural agencies, and the Development Academy of the Philippines. I won't go into details on the budgets I handled as chairperson, because our chairman has already highlighted many of them. Suffice it to say, we sought to future-proof and use strategic foresight to uphold intergenerational fairness and to be prepared for whatever challenges lie ahead, because we do live in a VUCA world. VUCA meaning volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. We heard the agencies using the lens of futures thinking and the SDGs as the main blueprint and guide to help attain the different goals for a more sustainable and prosperous future. And although the agencies whose budget this representation heard were those on health, education, and the cultural agencies as mentioned above, as your senior vice chair, we sought to participate in other hearings and will continue to do so in the plenary debates using the same lens that will ensure intergenerational fairness. Naturally, we are guided by the Constitution. Article 14, Section 5, Paragraph 5 provides that the state shall assign the highest budgetary priority to education and ensure that teaching will attract and retain its rightful share of the best available talents through adequate remuneration and other means of job satisfaction and fulfillment. With studies showing that learning poverty in the Philippines is real, and the detrimental effects of not being in the classroom for almost 2 years due to the restrictions imposed because of COVID, both in basic education and at the tertiary level, it is only fitting that we continue to look for ways to support the education sector. On health, Article 13, Section 11 of the Constitution provides that the state shall adopt an integrated and comprehensive approach to health development, which shall endeavor to make essential goods, health, and other social services available to all the people at affordable cost. The continued support for the health sector is reflected in the budget thanks to our chairman. This includes improving facilities for their operations, particularly the delivery of primary health care services, but also the establishment of specialty centers and their operations, increasing the carrying capacity for existing medical state universities and colleges, providing support to those with pending applications to offer medical programs, as well as increasing the carrying capacity of state universities and colleges with nursing and allied health programs. On another matter, UNICEF has reported that the Philippines has 1 million children who have not received a single dose of childhood vaccine. Funding for the hiring of immunization vaccinators will help us prevent a serious outbreak of vaccine-preventable diseases like polio and measles. On a final note, this representation appreciates the chairperson's trust over the years, and we thank the LBRMO and all the staff who worked on the budget. We will be ready to provide our colleagues with answers to their questions in the hope that we can continue to support these agencies. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to distinguished sponsor, Senator Pia Cayetano.
Thank you.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, next but not the least is the distinguished gentleman from the province of Davao. I move that he be recognized, Senator Christopher Bongo.
The distinguished gentleman from the great city of Davao, Senator Christopher Bongo, is recognized.
Mr. President, it is my honor to co-sponsor the 2023 budget bill, which provides for much-needed increases in our priority sectors. Public health should be one of our priorities. That is why I would like to take this opportunity to thank Senator Sani Angara, Chairman of the Committee on Finance, and Senator Pia Cayetano, sponsor of the health budget, for increases in the health budget, which I also push for during the budget hearing. As I have said before, the funding provided for health should be treated as an investment. As chairman of the Committee on Health, I commend the inclusion of additional budget for the expansion and strengthening of epidemiology and surveillance systems of the Department of Health. I also thank our colleagues for supporting the additional budget for the Cancer Assistance Fund for cancer treatment assistance. I also note the additional funds given for the hiring of immunization vaccinators to strengthen the immunization activities of the DOH to prevent potential outbreaks of various vaccine-preventable diseases. I also laud the additional budgets for the Health Facilities Enhancement Program and the Medical Assistance for Indigent Patients Program. Natutuwa din po ako na may pagpapatuloy ang pagtatayo ng additional super health centers sa iba't ibang sulok ng bansa sa susunod na taon para ma-improve ang accessibility ng ating health facilities at services. Mr. President, I also particularly thankful for the adoption of the proposed special provision under the PhilHealth budget that shall impress upon PhilHealth the use of the budget line item pertaining to benefit package improvement under Universal Healthcare Act. I am glad that the 21 billion allocated under PhilHealth will be used for increase in benefit packages, including the expansion of free dialysis coverage, mental health outpatient coverage, and the implementation of the comprehensive outpatient benefit package, including free medical checkup. Marami pong lumalapit sa akin at sa mga malasakit centers na nagpapatulong na mabayaran ang kanilang dialysis sessions. Ang gusto nila expand pa ang PhilHealth coverage sa dialysis. Marami din pong nagsasabi na kulang ang natatanggap na benepisyo mula sa PhilHealth, lalo na ngayong nagtataas ang mandatory contribution. Marami din pong takot magpa-check up dahil wala silang pambayad at o dagdag lang sa kanilang gastusin yung pagpapa-check up. Kaya dapat tutukan natin ito at tulungan. Dapat na-discover naman nila yung sakit, malala na ito, too late na minsan. Importante po yung early detection at makapagpa-check up kagad sila. Kaya dapat lamang po maimplementa na po ng buo ang Universal Healthcare Law para maging libre po ang pagpapa-check up. Sa pamamagitan ng inilagay natin na provision, mabibigyan din sa PhilHealth na kailangan nilang taasan pa ang mga benepisyo na ibinibigay nila tulad ng dialysis at palawakin pa ang free medical check-up o comprehensive outpatient benefit package program. This development would enable us to progressively realize universal healthcare in the country and ensure that all Filipinos are guaranteed equitable access to quality and affordable healthcare. I also laud the additional budget for the Overseas Filipino Workers Hospital, which was supported by its sponsor, Senator J.B. Ejercito. Isa po ito sa priority projects ng administrasyon ni dating Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte para sa ating mga OFWs at sa kanilang mga pamilya. At soon po magkakaroon din tayo ng malasakit center sa OFW Hospital. Patunay po ito na prioridad natin ang ating mga OFWs. Kaya din talagang isinulong ko ang pagtatag ng Department of Migrant Workers at naisabatas na ito sa pangunguna ng ating former chairman po ng Committee on Labor, ang ating Majority Leader Senator Joel Villanueva, at sa suporta ng kasamahan natin noong nakaraang Kongreso, headed by then Majority Leader, now Senate President Migs Subiri.
Masaya rin tayo na mayroon ng sariling budget sa susunod na taon ang Department of Migrant Workers. As chairman of the Committee on Sports, I also thank our chairman and the sponsor of the DepEd budget for including the additional budget for the operations of the National Academy of Sports. Isa rin po itong isa rin po ang itong National Academy of Sports sa mga proyekto ng nakarang administrasyon. Bilang isa sa nagsulong nito sa Senado, kasama sina Senator Pia Cayetano, Senator Win Gatchalian, Senator Sani Angara at mga kasama natin sa last Congress, natutuwa po ako na patuloy nating masusuportahan ang ating mga student athletes. Isang paraan itong NAS para masulong ang grassroots sports development, makakapag-training sila at the same time makakapag-aral. May susulong din natin ang sports sa ating mga kabataan, imbis na maligaw o malulong sila sa masasamang bisyo. Sabi ko nga, get into sports, stay away from drugs. Lastly, Mr. President, as the sponsor of the budget of the Philippine Sports Commission and the Games and Amusement Board, I also want to commend the Committee on Finance and our colleagues for supporting and adopting the increases in the budget of our sports program. The increases are mostly for the preparation, training, and participation of our athletes to international sports competitions. We also included budgets to international sports competition. We also included budget to support grassroots and community sports development. Patuloy po ang pag-angat ng mga Pilipino sa larangan ng sports sa buong mundo. Kaya sana po patuloy rin po natin silang susuportahan sa ating mga sports program para maingganyo sila na iprepresenta ang ating bansa sa iba't ibang mga palaro. At kagaya ng sinabi ko kanina, paraan din po ito na mailayo natin sila sa masasamang bisyo. On that note, I also again thank our chairman of the Committee on Finance, Senator Sani Angara, and all fellow vice chairpersons for coming up with this 2023 budget bill. As early as now, I congratulate everyone for the hard work that was put into crafting of this budget and the initiatives of everyone to support our priority sectors. Ang importante, magamit ang budget na ito para sa mga mahirap. Siguraduhin natin na walang magutom at matulungan ang mga helpless, hopeless at mga walang malapitan. Thank you, Mr. President.
Maraming salamat sa ating sponsor, Senator
Salamat.
Bongo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we wish to commend and thank the distinguished senator of the Committee on Finance, Senator Angara, together with his vice chairpersons for the hard work that they have done. We have the scheduled rundown of the agencies to be considered starting tomorrow, Mr. President. And so with that, I will move now that we suspend consideration of House Bill number 4488 under Committee Report number 10. I so move, Mr. President.
There's a motion by our distinguished majority floor leader. There being no objection, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this juncture, I move that we dispense with the reading of the journal of the 27th session, Monday, November 7, 2022, and consider the same as approved. So moved.
There being no objection, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the permission of the body, we take this privileged speech up, and I ask that we recognize the distinguished lady from Taguig, Pateros, no other than Senator Pia Cayetano, to deliver her speech.
Our distinguished colleague from the city of Taguig and Pateros is recognized, Senator Pia Cayetano.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm mindful of our time as we are lips ko, kailangan ng FDA regulation. Powder na may SPF 50. Pinapahid ko lang sa mukha ko, hindi ko inaamoy, hindi ko nilulunok, kailangan ng FDA regulation. Sunblock para sa lips, moisturizer and sunblock, kailangan din ng FDA regulation. Hindi ko din iniinom to, hindi ko din nilulunon. Eyeshadow, ganun din, pinapahid ko lang sa mata ko, hindi sa loob, sa balat. And finally, malaki bag ko eh. Alcohol. Okay, alam niyo yan, lahat yan, kailangan ng FDA regulation. Hindi pwedeng mag-claim na pwedeng gamitin sa isang bagay. Kung ano lang san pwede, doon lang pwede. So ang tobacco products, and itong mga tinatawag na novel tobacco products, hindi basta-basta pwedeng i-promote yan kahit sa mga doktor na nakakabuti. Ang mga doktor natin magagaling. Pero nagre-rely din sila sa mga tinatawag na scientists o mga experts para bigyan din sila ng bagong impormasyon. Eh yan nga mga bagong impormasyon. Tapos ang PMI magpapa-seminar or tinatawag na scientific forum at ang mga imbitado ay mga doktor. May kopya ako ng kanilang mga invitation para sabihin yung beneficial effects ng mga e-cigarettes, mga vapes, mga heated tobacco products. Hindi pwede yon, bawal yon. It is unethical, Your Honor. And it is my firm belief that since we are about to discuss the budget, sayang na ang dami sa atin, Senator Bongo just stood up to promote the support for more budget for health. Our chairman, Senator Angara, is trying to find funding to support health. May additional funding pa yon for the health workers that have dedicated their lives, who have risked their lives during the time of COVID, well, the height of COVID. May utang pa tayo sa kanila, di ba, Senator Angara? Bilyon ang utang natin sa kanila, tinayaan nila yung buhay nila. Tapos eto tayo, with one hand, naghanap ng pondo para tulungan ng health, and with the other hand, pinapabayaan natin itong mga seminar na to na gumagawa ng health claims na wala namang permiso sa FDA. So yun lang sa akin, Mr. President, because this Congress, this Senate, the previous Senate, passed the vape law, which happily includes a provision that says na bawal gawin yon. So hindi natin dapat payagan na gawin nila yun. Trabaho ba natin yon? Hindi. Trabaho ng FDA at ng DOH yan. But it is my job to bring it to the attention of the body para sama-sama naman tayong manindigan na hindi tayo pwede ng ganyan. Hindi pwede yung kabataan, hindi pwede yung mga Pilipino pinagbobobol at niloloko na dinadaan pa sa doktor ang information na ito na hindi ho tama. Let me end with a few other visuals. Ayan, tingnan niyo naman please, my dear colleagues. Ang nasa ad na ito, because the journal does not have pictures, why not nga naman, Mr. Majority Floor Leader, dapat yung journal natin may pictures, di ba? Because I don't know if I have the capacity. I am not like Senator Robin Hood Padilla who is there, who has the ability to explain very well in words, no, yung nakikita niya. And hindi ko alam kung kaya kong gawin yun, but I will just describe. Ito po ay mga advertisement na ang bida doktor, o at least mukhang doktor, na pinopromote ang sigarilyo. O di ba ngayon medyo nasya-shock tayo, wow talaga ha, gumamit pa ng doktor to promote cigarettes. But this is how it was maybe 50 years ago, Your Honors. Doktor, dentist ang ginagamit. Guess what? O ngayon, fast forward, ganun pa rin ginagamit nila. Doktor ngayon ang gusto nilang bolahin para doktor din ang magpo-promote ng vapes and e-cigs. It's the same story. Huwag naman tayo magpabola. Ngayon, shock tayo. With all due respect, I try to be a responsible chairman of the Committee on Sustainable Development and Futures Thinking. So let's put ourselves 50 years from now. Diba, titingnan din natin yung ads na ang kasama doktor na nagpo-promote ng vapes and e-cigs. Sasabihin din natin, ha? Ganon? Pumayag tayo na ganon? So ngayon pa lang, samahan nyo naman ako na sabihin na hindi tayo papayag ng ganyan, na nagpapaseminar in the guise of scientific forum. In fact, Your Honors, yung isang invitation nila, let me read the details. Sabi pa, it's an oncology-focused event. So oncologist pa, mga specialist pa ng cancer ang mga inimbete nila para sabihin mag-vape na lang yung mga pasyente nyo. Tama ba yon? Hindi tama yon, Your Honor. So on that note, let's celebrate our anniversary. And be united in fighting the good fight. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Floor Leader. Naisingit mo ko sa masikip nating schedule. And thank you, dear colleagues.
Thank you, Senator Pia, and I would just like to put on record that I commiserate and share the sentiments of our dear colleague, because a lot of young people are thinking, unfortunately, because of false news, fake news, na okay lang or hindi naman masama, healthy naman ang vaping, Mr. President. So I joined the distinguished lady from Taguig, and I moved that the speech of the distinguished lady, Senator Pia Cayetano, be referred to Committee on Health and Demography. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the motion, motion is approved.
Mr. President, at this juncture, I move that we suspend the session until 10 o'clock in the morning of Wednesday, November 9, 2022. So move, Mr. President.
Just a reminder to our colleagues, before we act on the motion, we will start the budget deliberation at 10 a.m. tomorrow and every day thereafter, except I believe we're keeping Friday open just in case we extend. But definitely, let's keep our Friday next week also open. Because if we have to finish everything on time next week.
And those who have enlisted, Mr. President, to ask questions will be called, and if they are not around, we will proceed
To
Mr.
pass
President,
the budget
to
of
pass
the
the
different
budget,
departments, yes.
Thank you.
So with that, there being no objection, session is suspended until 10 o'clock in the morning of Wednesday. Sorry. It's suspended. Suspended for 1 minute. There's been no objection, session suspended until 10 o'clock in the morning, Wednesday, November 9, 2022.
Thank you.
I'll all see you at the National Museum.
Thank you,
Buhay
Mr.
po.
President.